like panelists, and then the attendees, and Amit and Emily and.
Oh, are they in the attendees?
Yeah, they're in the, and then I saw
Okay.
Irene for a second, and she was in the attendees, but now I don't see her in either one.
And I was in the attendees, but Julie sent me a link, so now I'm not, because I was stuck there too. I couldn't figure out how to, and I was waving and no one could hear me or see me.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
for the panelists, which you are, and the other one is the webinar when people want to just come and look at and be a part of. You are the panelists, and it says join here. That's where you click. Webinar is for people who just want to listen in and observe. It's a different one.
Yeah, that's why use the link that I send you or that you get from Zoom. The hyperlink on the agenda is for people, as Gina explained, who want to watch.
So the people who are just aren't able to get in right now, that Precious said she saw, Emily just said the same thing. She has the wrong link. So I will send her the link.
Everyone on my
maybe.
I see Irene is back in the attendees. Irene, come.
I don't see Irene on my attendees.
I see Amit, Emily, Simon, Irene, Kai, Carolyn Anderson. Those are the ones I see.
I can't move them. I mean,
Can you resend them the link, Anne, so that right now, because they can probably hear what we're saying? And so resend them the link to their email so that they can all hop on?
Maybe they could just search their email and find it because they have it from Zoom.
So I searched my email and I couldn't find it. I'm just trying to.
Thanks, Nataki. I got your message.
Yeah, because I'd love for us to be able to use this valuable time while we have our city manager pro tem here to answer all good questions for us. So if we could resend that, Anne, that would be awesome. So people could just.
I'll dig through my emails and try and pull it up. Thanks.
I also can send it to, I can send the link that you sent me, but it will have my name attached when you log in. So who are we missing here?
Emily,
I just sent it to Emily.
Amit just sent a question saying I have the wrong link, I guess.
Right.
I'll send to him.
yeah, because it says 13 participants. We are not.
Is it possible that they were sent the wrong link?
No, you're probably entered the meeting with the hyperlink on the agenda, which is the link for people who want to come and watch the meeting. The link that you should be using is the one that you received from Zoom. I invited you to participate in a meeting, a Zoom meeting.
Perfect. Yeah.
So
there's
two different links, and you need to use the one that you get from me, not the one on the agenda.
So I just checked down below. It says there's a email from Sherry.
Sherry is here.
She's
Yeah,
there.
I got it. I got it
Okay.
fixed.
And oh, that's you on the screen. All right.
That's
So
me on the screen
Tammy-
now. But there's several commissioners who had the same issue that I did. And I looked back through my emails and I wasn't seeing anything other than the one that I had. So
Right.
I'm just trying to, as fast as we can, get it to everybody.
I'm sending it to Amit and Irene right now. I hope
Thanks,
it's right.
Precious.
Yeah, I think it's the right one.
Mine wound up directly in my calendar. So that's where it was living, but I too went to the Zoom on the city page. So now we'll just need to send a quick tutorial next time so we don't take up time doing this.
Can someone resend it to Emily? Can you resend it to Emily as well? I tried to forward her what Julie sent me and it's not working. So
I'm trying to send it to Tammy as well, which means that also I believe it will she'll be able to pass that on to Keith. I have to go through a different thing to get to it.
Keith is not able to attend.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that.
There's Emily. Irene, I sent it to you. I
Oh,
don't
yay.
I sent it to Irene, but I don't know if she got it. I sent it to her in the chat.
That's the agenda.
Emily? When you
Yes,
have a moment, change your name in your screen because it shows up as Julie, I think because of the way you logged in.
Mhm. Same thing for you. I mean,
Natalka, whoever just suggested that to me, I'm a little concerned about touching anything right now,
Okay,
okay?
no
So I
problem.
appreciate the suggestion, but I just had to go through about 8 steps to get in. I'm teched out.
Okay, you know who you are, so you're okay. It's Anya. I'm off camera, but I'm here. I know.
Emily and I can
Although
share a
you have
name
now
today.
officially stolen Julie's name, but it's
Yep.
okay.
Well,
I
she's
consider it an honor.
she'll be Giles and I'll be Gillis. We'll be different by one little letter.
But we do know it's Emily. We do know who you are.
I consider it an honor to be, have your name for the purpose of this, Julie.
Well, and it is mutual honor.
Irene, are you there? I've moved you into the meeting. There you are.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow,
4:10.
that was a real journey.
It's 4:10 and I'm going to call the meeting to order. The first order of business is approval of the minutes from your September 8th meeting. Do I have a motion from anyone?
I'll move.
Second,
Who was the second?
me, Precious.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Hands, please. Motion passes. Thank you. No, there is no, public input. I skipped one. So Sherry Elson was not able to be with us at the last meeting. And so she has some time on the agenda. I've allotted her 5 minutes to give us her background and let you know about her.
Thank you. Let me just pull up my notes here. So thank you, everyone. I'm really honored. First of all, I just want to say after listening to everybody else's introductions from last month, I'm so honored to be on this commission with all of you amazing people, and I look forward to working with everyone. My name is Sherry Elson. My pronouns are she, her. I moved to Ashland back in 2014 with my husband from Southern California. I practiced estate planning law for 20 years. The last 4 were here in Ashland. And I retired 6 months ago, which is really, really exciting. So I am a musician. My degree actually from university is in music. And I'm a lover of nature and the arts. And I also would like to consider myself a social activist. So I come to this commission in a couple of different ways. First, I come as a white-skinned woman. And like most people my age, I was brought up unaware of the concept of white privilege or the meaning of white supremacy beyond the KKK and Jim Crow. And several years ago, I began learning about my white privilege in general, and my white privilege and a systemic racism upon which this nation was founded and which exists around all of us today still. And the more I learn, the more I understand that I need to continue to learn every single day. And I also realized that I have to use my voice and my privilege to help dismantle the privilege and the systemic racism. I also come to this commission as a Jew. I am the daughter and the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors. On my mother's side, her father, my Zeta, was the only member of his family to survive. And if I go home to my parents' house and look at the wall of family photos, it's full of entire sections of my family tree that were just wiped off the face of the earth. On my mother's side, my grandma, my booby, her town was one of the very first towns Hitler invaded. And she told stories of running across bridges while being strafed, fleeing in the river, and being actually in the river so that the Nazis and the dogs could not hear her. I am so sorry. So that the Nazis and the dogs could not find them and catch their scent, and she could hear the dogs right behind her. So terrifying, terrifying stories. After the war, the three of them smuggled back across Europe and ended up in a refugee camp in Germany, where they remained for 2 years, and then they resettled to Canada, which is where most of the family remains today. And the reason I bring that up is because the sole reason they're in Canada is that the US had very strict quotas as to how many Jews were allowed in the country, even after we had almost been annihilated in Europe. My last name is Elson because on my father's side, my grandfather shortened it, believing that nobody would go to a dentist whose last name was Israelson. I have personally experienced anti-Semitism, both overtly and in microaggressions. More than once in my life, I have been told that I'm the one that's overreacting when I am telling someone that something that they're saying is not sensitive or is anti-Semitic. And I do absolutely understand how infuriating that is, having dealt with it myself on multiple occasions. And I'm always aware of being other. I enter every situation assessing how much of myself I can safely expose. So it's an interesting space to inhabit, both privileged because of the color of my skin and persecuted because of my ethnicity and my religion. And that brings me to then why I wanted to be on this commission and why I'm so happy to be here. I believe strongly in the Jewish concept of tikkun olam, which is repairing the world and leaving it a better place than it was before we were here. There's so many wonderful things about our beautiful town and valley, and there's also a lot of problems. And again, I was woefully unaware of most of those problems when I moved here in what I call my white-skinned fog of ignorance back in 2014. And I'm learning. And if I can be a true ally, if I can be a true advocate and use my voice and my place on the commission to fix even some of these problems, to help move Ashland down that spectrum and help it become the vision and the version of itself that I think we all believe it could be, then I'll know I participated in Tikkun Olam and I'll know that my time here was well spent. So I'm looking forward to working with all my fellow commissioners on this most important and fulfilling task. And thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. So now we get to what was to be a presentation, including Tina Gray, who is unable to be with us because she is sick, and Gary Millman, who is our city manager pro tem, is here. I sent all of you an email with Tina's responses to your questions. I have it up on the screen if you want me to screen share, but I thought that maybe what you might want to do is just go through her responses and we'll go from there. Yes, Gary.
Just a suggestion. Happy to be with all of you today, by the way. Just a suggestion is as you go through them, if you identify gaps in what we're doing, as you're looking through the responses, or don't feel that the response was on point to your question, please let us know. I'd welcome the opportunity to hear from the commission on where we can find resources to fill those gaps that you identify. We really want to be responsive. I've only been here 2 months and 2 days, although Gina, it seems longer. And this area has not been my focus, quite frankly. I've been dealing with organizational and financial matters and just a lot of issues that have been on the table for a while. So I feel inadequate to respond to a lot of these questions myself. But I think Tina's done a fair job, a good job in responding to the questions with what information we have. Certainly we can do better. And we're hoping to hear advice from you on how to do that. I had told Ann I was going to let her run with this tonight, and I jumped in early, but I'm going to go back to listening at this point. And I think I'll be responding to question 3 when the time comes.
Thanks, Gary.
Excuse me, can I
Emily?
ask a question of Gary, please? Gary, I think it would be helpful for the members of the commission if you gave us a little bit of information about your background
Okay.
and told us what the role of city manager was for people on the commission who may not be familiar with what you actually do.
Sure.
Could you do that? Would that be helpful, folks, for that to happen?
Sure, I could get through that pretty quickly. So I was born and raised in Los Angeles, in the East Los Angeles area of Los Angeles County, and graduated from high school in Bell, California, and attended East Los Angeles Community College. And California State College was not a university at the time, at Los Angeles, there in the East Los Angeles area. Then went to work as a journalist. My major was in journalism. So I was a newspaper reporter in Los Angeles and a community newspaper editor in the city of Bell Gardens near Los Angeles, and a weekend editor, if you will, at a daily newspaper in Huntington Park near East Los Angeles. So I started work with cities in 1971. I had just gotten married, and the city of Bell Gardens was looking for someone to help them with community relations. It paid $100 more a month and had health benefits. So I changed careers and gradually expanded my role in city government, went back to school, got my master's degree from USC. And a few years later, I moved to Northern California into Sonoma County for my first city manager job. I was the interim manager in Bell Gardens twice. They decided I was too young to be a city manager. So I wasn't able to get my first city manager job there. I had to go outside of LA to do that. So I was in Sonoma County shortly, and then in Mendocino County with the city of Fort Bragg for 18 years as the manager, and left being city manager and organized a group of investors and bought a railroad. And managed the Skunk Train tourist railroad in Fort Bragg for about 3 years, and then went back into city government as the Southern California director for the League of California Cities in Los Angeles. So went north, then back south, then served as the city manager in Southgate, California, a southeast Los Angeles city I was familiar with, that had just experienced a period of political corruption and mismanagement, and spent a good amount of time helping the city council there recover from that difficult time, and retired in 2000. and moved to Oregon and decided I was not really ready to retire. So I became the city manager in Brookings and made a 3-year commitment to Brookings and retired 11 years later in 2018. So in my spare time since 2018, I've been a volunteer senior advisor with the International City County Management Association, advising city managers and serving as a sort of mentor counselor for them. I can tell you from experience that it can be a very stressful job. And city managers are reluctant to interact with their coworkers to express their personal feelings and demands of the job. So they look for some old guy or old woman like me to provide them with that resource. So I've been doing that. I currently serve as a municipal court judge in 4 rural Oregon cities, and pick up a few other volunteer things here and there. So I came to Ashland in August. It seemed like the city needed some assistance to deal with this transition to the city manager form of government, which is new in Ashland. So I've been working with the city council primarily in addressing a fiscal shortfall that's upcoming and in assisting them with understanding and implementing the council manager form of government. Previously, it was what we call a mayor council form of government, where the mayor appointed a city administrator who had limited authority. The city manager is indeed the manager of the city operation day to day, and works under the direction of the policy direction of the city council to manage the affairs of the city on a day-to-day basis. Doesn't really have a policy role, but kind of serves as a bridge between policy and management, and oversees the functions of oversees and coordinates the functions of the various departments. Ashland, for its size, has quite a breadth of services that it provides, and it's a pretty challenging place for a small staff.
Thanks, Gary. Yes, Gina.
I just want to jump in quickly, and Gary, thank you for being here today. And I look forward to this body, these commissioners, taking the opportunity to ask all the hard questions now that we have you with us. And I just want the commissioners to know that I and other counselors are very pleased to have Gary in this position right now. And I say that honestly. Gary, you are in the right place at the right time. Thank you.
Well, thanks.
Okay, I know that Nataki has to leave soon. So why don't I share the screen and we'll take a look at Tina's responses to your questions. Do you see it? Yeah.
Yes, we see it.
Thank you. So this first question, please clarify all demographic data for the City of Ashland employees over the last 5 years. I'll go ahead and read her responses just in case the print is small on your screens. The city does not track demographic data. We have a voluntary question in our application process, which we use for mandatory EEOC reporting. Otherwise, we do not have any metrics about employee demographics. Employees are hired based on their talent, skills, and abilities. And then she has a note, the city has experienced a much higher than average turnover from 2019 to present due to retirements, layoffs, and resignations. So our employee demographics are rapidly changing. The next.
Can I just contribute something there quickly?
Yes.
I've been reviewing applications for some positions in this office, and Ashland is the first city where I've worked where the employment application does not have a name of the applicant and does not have any information about their demographics, does not have a birth date, does not have any dates of college graduation, does not have any information about their current compensation. I think the city's done a good job of trying to cleanse the applications of that information, which could be considered influencing in an inappropriate way. Just as an observation.
Thanks, Gary. The next question, please highlight and clarify any social justice, racial equity, or other equity initiatives within the city of Ashland. Who holds these initiatives? Who is responsible for seeing them through? And how does the Surge Commissions work to support those initiatives, if at all? Tina's response, as an organization, we want to do more, and we need to do more to promote DEI. HR hopes to be a partner with Surge. However, we have budget and resource limitations. We have been hindered in our progress by several emergencies and staffing changes. HR is 2 people for 250 employees. So we have been maxed out with COVID mask and vaccine issues at a time with limited staffing and remote work complexities. The city was gaining momentum on creating an internal DEI committee when COVID and the Alameda fire redirected staffing resources and priorities. We plan to conduct a confidential survey to determine how employees feel the city is doing to establish a baseline. We have a DEI statement for the city. When some of our key leadership positions are filled and in-person meetings resume, we will continue with our plans to kick off our internal committee. While HR has a primary role in attracting diverse talent, we all have equal responsibility for creating and maintaining an inclusive and positive work environment for all. Let's see, the third question.
I have a question, please.
Yes.
To Gary. Thank you. It said actually we planned to conduct a confidential survey to determine how employees feel the city is doing to establish a baseline. So I was wondering, Gary, if you are aware of that plan for the survey for the employees, and if you have a sense as to when it might be implemented, or if that would be a question for Tina.
That would be for Tina. I'm not engaged in that at this time.
Thank you.
Number 3, please clarify what constitutes work. In our last meeting, there was a discussion that laid out the commission's inability to create or assign additional work to city employees. We are asking for clarification to ensure that we're staying within the guidelines. So this is definitely a question for Gary.
Okay, I think you may have provided the commission with that section of the municipal code, which talks about the role of staff and commissions.
Yes, that there is a link from their page on the website to the advisory committee handbook and to the operating procedures of advisory commissions. Again, I've been here for 2 months and 7 days, but I have conferred with other city staff members who provide support to commissions. And typically their role has been to gather information in response to questions from commissioners, provide that information to the commissioners, work with commissioners in the development of written responses or recommendations to the city council. The commission is essentially an advisory commission to the council. It's not an oversight commission.
identifying aspects of the city that could improve. Some commissions have made very formal reports to the city council, somewhat detailed. A lot of that work they have done has been accomplished by the commission members themselves, and the commission staff helps with formatting, maybe does some editing or whatever they can do administratively to support that effort. I've seen some of the presentations, as you may have, at city council meetings from other commissions, and those presentations are largely prepared by the commissioners themselves. So we can gather information and provide that to you. If we can help make recommendations to the council for any improvements in our process or budget or allocation of funds. And we can certainly take your advice before it even gets to the council on any resources that we can use or improvements that we can make to the system. It's a matter of having our own resources available to implement those recommendations that we make.
Well, it sounds like that from the answer to one of the questions that we really don't have a budget for much else, from what I'm understanding. And referring back to the questions, I heard that Ann said in the answer that Tina gave that they don't have any demographic information. So how do we know that everything is rapidly changing if we don't have demographic information? Where are we getting that information from if we don't have that information already on hand? It's just kind of getting kind of confusing, kind of like bunching together for me, because Gary, we're so grateful to have you here, but you kind of sound like you really don't fully know the extent to our questions either. So I'm just kind of trying to get a better understanding because I'm getting.
I don't know the answers to the questions. I just became aware that Tina was not available today. So I've had maybe 10 minutes to review this.
Right, but it's still answering my question. I'm saying if we don't have any demographic information on hand, if we don't have it, how do we know that things are rapidly changing, basing stuff on demographics, and since this is a racial equity commission?
Sure, I think it's a reasonable question that we can get a follow-up answer to.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
I think Anya had her hand up, and then I'd like to make a comment after Anya.
You can go ahead, Gina. I'll go next.
Okay, so something that I just wanted to touch on is a little bit about what Tammy brought up, is that because this is all new. This is all new to the city of Ashland. We've never had a commission like this before. There's never been requests made like this before. I'm just going to be very honest and snatch the Band-Aid off. Ashland is white pretty much. Everybody who's probably worked here has been white. And so now is the time. I think maybe this might have been spoken a little bit too soon. Now is the time we're making the changes. Now is the time. We have not had this type of commission to ask these questions, to look at these concerns, and now we do. So now is the time for change. And maybe Tina kind of got it mixed up in that way, but I believe now is our time to change. Also, when Gary was talking about work, what the staff can do, and I look forward to Ann and I working together to make this happen, is to have this commission, this body, go meet and speak to other bodies. The Housing and Human Service Commission is very excited to meet with this body. Arts Commission is very excited because the Arts Commission, they're doing things at the Railroad District to celebrate the people who put together the railroads, and now we're going to celebrate the life of Aiden Ellison. So there's a lot of, and even the Planning Commission, they take care of the city and make the plans. So I believe it's good for Ann and I to work together to get this body in with other bodies. Okay, take it away, Ann.
If I could make one further comment on staff support. all of the other commissions in the city, and there are 15 of them, have a staff support provided by someone who works in the city department, who has lots of other things to do. And they may have 2 or 3 commissions to support. And their ability to provide support to those commissions is pretty limited, quite frankly, trying to do all of their other work. So when I saw this commission coming forward, basically on the first day I arrived, and talking with Councillor Duquesne and others about the importance of this commission and the level of effort that would be needed to get it started off right and understand the issues that are coming back from the commission as we get them. I looked around at our staffing and decided that this is not something that needs to be part of someone else's daily job. And so that's why I recruited and brought back Anne, and her only job with the city is staffing this commission. So I made room in the city manager's office budget to be able to, I think, more appropriately staff this commission.
So thank you for that, Gary, because I think that leads into what I was going to posit to my fellow colleagues and to the rest of the group, which is this. So, you know, I'm coming from a county government that had 2,700 employees. And when commissions were, you know, stood up, there was more kind of operational pieces that we could assign, right? That we could ask folks to participate in. I have spent the days and weeks since our last meeting looking at the demographics in terms of how many employees you all have, any information I could dig up and find on fiscal impediments and just where the city is. And so I think we as a commission are at this kind of crossroads of understanding what Gina Duquesne put forward, right? Which is there's a want to do some of this work, but there's a lack and a gap in someone being able to facilitate, aside from Anne, right, to be able to facilitate this. I think the question about the definition of work, though, and of budget, where this comes up and becomes a little problematic or something that we need to work through, is the sheer nature of this commission, based on the tone, the tenor, and the time that we are in, as now some of us, you know, who are now permanent residents of Ashland, asking for a social justice and racial equity committee to move some real things, right, that increase the ability of the city to do better around racial justice, that increase our ability to give recommendations, is going to have to fall to somebody to do that work.
Yeah.
And so at some point, there's going to have to be a conversation about how that work is spread across not just this commission, but are there intersections between other commissions? Does it mean when you have right-sized the organization in terms of finances, that there's someone assigned to help do that work? Because the way that I think we're looking at this, or I'll say the way I am looking at this, I'll speak for myself, is any recommendation we come up with is going to cause someone to have to do the work. And that someone is going to have to be willing to bear down into work that they may not be familiar with. And the sheer nature of what Ashland represents as a predominantly, you know, wealthy and white town, being asked by folks of color to start to make shifts, if somebody doesn't have a DEI background or a race equity and inclusion background, it's going to be a huge challenge. So I really appreciate Gina just calling out what it is and being honest. And I think what we should do is continue to figure out having these conversations about what is the realistic view for the next 12 months of what this commission can actually do. Because if you look at the questions that we asked questions that were about trying to pick up work that may have already been done, when in fact, we're just not there. Nothing has actually been done because that's not the nature of what this city has ever engaged in before. And so I know that's a lot, I'm saying a lot, but I really, really want us to all approach this in a way that gives some grace to the fact that clearly there are no active initiatives that are in the city that relate to racial equity other than statements that have been made by the city in response to things that have happened in the city. And then the celebration of like Aiden Ellison, for example, and maybe a few other things. And I think if we acknowledge that and then say as a commission, as we continue to grow together, we know that we'll be able to get to initiatives by May, and I'm just throwing out a date, 2022. And at that time, we will need to revisit support staff to actually do that. Because like you, Mr. Milliman, we all have jobs and a lot of work. And I want to bring my best self to this commission and support as much as I possibly can, knowing that we have limited resources.
If I may, I think you are on point there. I think something that the commission, a recommendation that the commission can make or consider is what is the appropriate budget for the work of the commission? What is the appropriate level of staffing in support of the work of the commission or the work that the commission identifies that needs to be accomplished?
Yeah.
Right now, the commission itself has no standalone budget that I know of. And whatever your information or resources you're requesting are coming out of an existing budget in some department, probably HR or the city manager's department, which have already been squeezed.
Right.
And the timing is appropriate because we start work on our budget in March. So by May, we're in the final throes of developing the budget for the next year.
Okay. Yeah. And I don't know, Anne, how we posit motions for that at some point, which I will learn from you how we do that. But I think that it just needs to be noted that in a beginning stages of what we're doing with no actual budget, the proposal of a budget has to be based on what initiatives are going to go forward. And those initiatives are going to have to be decided upon based on everybody's input on this commission and agreed upon, right? And then voted. And it may be that we say we can only afford as an initial step 1 or 2 initiatives for the year 2022 based on budget constraints. And that the wish and goal is that by 2023, we've increased that number to 3 or 4.
Yeah,
so
okay.
I just wanted to pop that.
So let me just respond a little bit, Anya, and follow up to what Gary was suggesting. I think for those of you who have read all the way through Tina's responses, you can see that the biggest obstacles is not, it's not her reluctance not to do something, but her challenge is lack of resources, lack of budget, and lack of staffing. So what your power is, if you will, is as an advisory commission, you can develop a list of recommendations and bring it forward to the city council. Staff can't change the budget or increase the staffing. But if you bring your recommendations forward to the city council, those could be considered. And as you say, Anya, that list might be, I don't know, 20 different initiatives, but realistically, given the budget and staffing, maybe only 2 initiatives for the year 2022. But at any rate, that blessing, that approval comes from the city council. Once the city council approves your recommendations, it goes to the city manager and it's up to him or her to figure out how to implement those initiatives at a staff level. Emily, you've had your hand up.
I have, firstly, I want to thank Gary for being here today. Anya, I very much appreciate what you had to say, and I think that it's, you'll excuse me, I think it's right on. And I think for us to go through the answers to these questions, I think the question essentially, particularly with how Gina phrased it, gave us the answer to what's being done right now, which is lots of work that needs to be done. That's the best way I can say that.
Yeah.
Gary, I do have another question for you. I have two things I'd like to raise, and I'd particularly like to make sure that this gets at least raised before Nataki has to leave, because she was part of the subcommittee on it. And because I think it goes right to this issue of staffing and what do we do with things when we get them. So even though it's later on in the agenda, with, I think, Anne, your permission, while Gary is here, and I don't know how long he can be there for, because I see that it's 10:05, if I could ask this question, I'd very much appreciate it. So my question is, so our subcommittee delved into the issue about what I would call mediation services, which is in subsection H of the city commission, of the Surge Commission, and what we're supposed to be doing. And the question that they posed was, after that point, meaning that we get somebody that maybe want to do negotiation services, we, the commission, would request from city council the appropriate funding, okay, to do that work. And what Julie Gillis and I think the other members of the commission were unclear about was if the city has to do additional vetting of vendors it works with, but assume that would be on the city side of things, not as ours, as we are on city employees. So I think I'm asking this question actually to not just Gary, but to Gary, Gina, and Anne, because I appreciate Anya about waiting and trying to develop what we want to do. But this was something that was identified. Four of you, excuse me, I think, put in time on this, and you come up with a fundamental question. How do we get the money to pay for the mediators if these people are willing to do it? And who determines if these would be appropriate contractors to do that? Is it staff? Is it the commission? Is it city council? Is it a combination of all three? Or maybe we don't have an answer to that yet, but I think it's something that we're going to need to address every single time as it stands right now, that we identify something that should be dealt with. And this was a request. Anne had identified this as something that she felt we could move forward on. So I'm following up because for me, Anya, although I very, very much appreciate what you're saying, it's going to be hard for me to only do planning for 8 months when this topic burns so deeply.
Absolutely. And let me just, I'm sorry to jump in, but let me just say, I agree. And did, to her credit, she did answer back to the subcommittee what the idea was. And Julie I'm trying to be mindful of how we share information, making sure we're in a quorum, making sure we're following the guidelines. So what we did was we saw an answer that essentially said that the subcommittee would vet, right? And tell me if I'm wrong, Anne, but vet those folks and then bring to them a recommendation based on that vetting. So that answers that part of the question, but what it does not answer is how we pay these people. And anyone who has done work with these consultants, let me just say that you're talking about a minimum usually of anywhere from $20,000 to $60,000 for a consulting firm to come in and to do the type of services that we want. And so I completely agree with you. I don't mean that we hold 8 months, but if there is no budget, we're right back to square one. The initiatives will not matter. So it's a two-pronged thing.
So one of the, I thought I maybe had mentioned this when I responded, but one of the vetting questions that would be asked is do they do pro bono work? And if so, have they done this kind of work before? The conciliatory services, or as Emily calls them, mediation services, would be on a case-by-case basis based on somebody coming forward to the commission that is wanting some sort of resolution to an issue. And so is it, we would break it down to, is it $200 an hour? Is it $1,000 for 3 hours? We don't know until we ask the question. So if it's $1,000 an hour, I'm sure, Gary, you would support me in this. We could find $1,000 to pay for conciliatory services. If we're looking at 20 to 60,000, that is a major budget hit. And it would have to be something that is included in a budget that may or may not get passed by the budget committee. So part of that vetting is, what is the cost of their services on a case-by-case basis?
And if I may,
It wouldn't be the first time that a city manager got the assignment of going and find money in somebody's budget to pay for a service that nobody thought about at budget time. So that's part of the life of a city manager. So that as Ann says, on say small dollar issues is something we could probably figure out. But there's a whole nother question there. And that is that when you meet with individuals who are bringing these matters to your attention, how's the record developed for that? Where does that record reside? Is that a public record? I mean, there's a whole nother realm of administration that needs to be vetted and organized here.
Julie?
yes, that is absolutely correct. And I think it's actually indicated a little bit lower in one of these questions about a place where people can report. So if is it someone coming to me at Safeway, where do I place that information that it to wind up becoming part of the public record, if that's what it is? And then how fast does the process move? Because my understanding is that we would take this small list that we have so far. I could call them, have a quick conversation, find out their general rules, their rates, pro bono or not. But then once a request for conciliatory services has been requested, and where does that get requested through? I don't want that person then to wait a month or 3 months to have it go through a meeting and get bumped for something else. And then maybe the money's there, maybe it isn't, because that is a frustrating thing for someone who has been harmed. So there's a piece of how fast how fast can things move? What pipeline are they in to be seen? And how deep do I get in, or any of us on this commission or subcommittee wind up getting in that process, right? So
we need to set up a system to handle.
So it moves as fast as everything is teed up. So if we have things teed up, it can move pretty quickly. But if things aren't vetted and we have to start from scratch each time, then it would take longer. I do think that is something on a future agenda that you guys need to talk about. What is that process? How will it come forward? Of course, if somebody comes to you at the grocery store, Julie, or submit something online, it is public record. It has to, and so that person has to be comfortable with this being a public record. And that's why if that person is not comfortable with it being a public process, you have developed a list of services that you could give to this person that they could seek help in another way. But coming through this commission, it's public, and they would have to be comfortable with that. Gina.
Thank you. I just wanted to jump in really quickly, and I don't know which one it is. I think it's number 7, 6, and 7. So 6 and 7. I worked with Tina, came to me. We talked about the possibility of who could we get on board, who could come to city council. Mike and Emily Green, I met them through BASE. We worked together on MLK. They are an awesome consulting group, and they went to the city of Ashland. I didn't know the dollar amount, but now I see it's 3,500. And so these people are local people, and maybe start there. You know, we could start there with where we are and see how much they would charge. Part of this, part of the work that this commission is going to be doing is people are going to come up to you. And I agree with you, Julie. Somebody's in pain, somebody's been hurt. We want to have the resources right then and there to help them. And I also agree with you, Ann, having everything in place. So having the resource in place where people can go to and they know that they might get a call on the fly that, hey, this person is hurt. I believe it's important for us to do it. What's the next step and what's the next step? And maybe you can go and look at Mike Green's work and see for yourself, or bring other possibilities to this body. And I'm going to let Nataki finish because I want you to have a voice.
Thank you. So thank you for that, Gina. I'm just going back to Ann's statement that if somebody has to say something, and it has to be in a public space. And I guess that one of the things that as a commission we could recommend is that there be a kind of private way to do that, a private clearinghouse where information can be gathered. One of the recommendations as a commission might be to create a safe space for people to share their experiences. I'm looking specifically at questions 12 and 13 and the answer to the question, how are minority hires being supported so that they feel welcomed, included, and valued? And the answer is, we treat all employees equally and work hard to make every new hire feel welcomed, included, and valued. My question to that is how? Like, what are the mechanisms that you have in place in order to make sure that that's possible? Is the $3,500 that was spent in working with that one consulting agency, is that the methodology? And this, because if that's the case, then it seems like this is another place where we're going to want to, as a commission, make a recommendation for how the city might actually be able to guarantee that they are equalizing the experience for all kinds of people. And then the second question is, we should hope that an employee would feel comfortable reporting any workplace issue with their direct supervisor. This is in reaction to, is there a mechanism for minority hires to raise issues regarding racism or any other discrimination or microaggressions in their work environment to supervisors? And if so, what is it? So this is another one of those places where what I'm hearing in the answer is that the answer is no, we don't actually have a way to make sure that people feel safe in expressing their experiences of microaggressions, which are invariably, microaggressions are to make sure people feel isolated and feel like they do not have a voice. So it feels like what I'm hearing, and both Gary and Ann, and also Eugenia, what I'm hearing is, I want to make sure I understand that these are the spaces where the commission could create a list of recommendations for the city, and then the city could make their actions based on the recommendations from this body. In answering these questions, there are these several areas where I feel like there's at least 4 recommendations on this list. I think one of the things that comes up for me personally is we can make as many recommendations as there are questions on this list. But in order for this commission to be successful, I guess we have to have a criteria for success. Like, what does it look like when this commission is successful? That you've implemented all the strategies, that we've located resources for all the strategies, that we've been able to do 1 or 2. And I think that's also probably a point of conversation for the commission to have, because it's clear with, I run a nonprofit, so I'm clear that you put your resource where your values are. There has to be, that is true in city government. You put your resources where your values are. So in shifting the values of the city of Ashland, how do we know that the work that we're doing is actually going to move towards some sort of good for the people who are microaggressed against or need a kind of safety or cover in expressing what their true lived experiences have been, even outside of police misconduct. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I just want to throw in there, in case you're curious about looking it up, Mike and Emily Green's program that they run. It's on the website, or they have their website called Common Ground Conversations. So if you want to take a look at that.
So if I may, I'm just using my glasses. So
I'll help you, Nataki. You pronounce my name Nataki.
I think you're exactly right. A big part of the role, as I see it, of this commission is serving as a resource, actually, for the staff to identify. I mean, you're exactly right. The answers reach out for help, right? So it would be great if the commission could serve as a resource for that, to assist in that effort.
Julie, excuse me, Emily, your name's.
Fine. I have a process suggestion, and I think this will soon devolve into a motion. I think there are many things on this list, as Nataki just referenced, that are specific suggestions that we can make get addressed by HR, or that just from reading them, we have problems with, just from the answers. And I think that, without putting words in Nataki's mouth, which I would never want to do, is numbers 12 and 13, the answer to that, as she addressed, were that, of course, there should be a safe space. And of course, there should be something to make sure that many people are uncomfortable speaking with their supervisor, because that is who has microaggressed against them, is how to deal with those issues. So I think we could make those suggestions. I personally would make the suggestion that the city of Ashland switch now to a culturally competent calendar that included Jewish holidays, that included Muslim holidays, that included holidays that are important to people who are Black, that included Latinx holidays, that at least referenced the days that are important, so that in scheduling meetings, people would know. And I would make that recommendation. Gary, honestly, I don't know how much that would cost or what that would mean or how to have that happen. But as a commission, as I understand it, we could make that recommendation, and it would be one that, based upon this answer from Tina Gray, I would feel prepared to make, so that we knew the result. I don't think we can come up with all of our list of questions right now, because it's 5:06 and people do have other timing, and there are other things on the agenda that should be gotten to, I believe. So my motion at this point would be that we form a subcommittee to work on a list of specific recommendations that we have based upon the answers that we have already received, as a way of moving us forward.
Is there a second? Julie?
Emily, can we
take
say that one more
down
time?
the screen? I'm really having trouble.
Yeah,
I'm really having trouble seeing people. So I feel like I'm talking into a vacuum. So if we take down the screen share, thank you very much, Anne. I appreciate that. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, I was furiously trying to take some notes, and I'm wondering if you can restate it again, because I'm not sure I'm completely clear on the motion. So it's hard to second or discuss it if I'm not exactly certain what, so if you could restate it.
Sure. My motion is that we make a subcommittee and that subcommittee works on a specific list of recommendations that we have to the city of Ashland to address some of the answers in Tina Gray's list that we think can be addressed. Because I don't think we can do that in the next 20 minutes. I think it's going to require some real work from people to sit down and start doing it. That's my motion.
I will second that motion, Julie.
I've got a second with Julie. Okay. So what?
Emily.
I just want to restate the motion is to form a subcommittee to develop a list of recommendations based on the responses to Tina's responses, based on the responses from Tina.
And that's from Emily.
Yep.
The real Emily.
Not Julie, because I keep saying Julie. Can I also posit that, and I don't know if this is the order to do this, but I have dropped 3 resources, Gary, for you all to capture. I can find them again and email them for the city of Ashland. One is Multnomah County's equity and diversity work. The other is their empowerment lens work. And the last is their belonging workforce equity initiative. Those 3 things can help kickstart and guide. And the last one is the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. Marin County and almost all of the counties in Northern California, and actually they're a national resource, use them. But those are 3 things that you could begin to share with your staff to actually start to look into, so that when we come up with these recommendations, the recommendations follow some of those guidelines, and then it's not another meeting for how to vet through those recommendations. So that's just kind of a jump start for you. And the last is the city of San Antonio actually has a racial equity budgeting analysis document that I will send you, that they use to integrate race equity into their budgeting process.
If you could send those to Ann.
Sure.
So they don't get lost in my email.
Sure.
Is there any more discussion on the motion?
The only question I have about the motion, which I am in agreement with, is the current subcommittee working on conciliatory services. Will we hold that and continue? I can continue to vet those folks and get information while we're doing this ongoing.
I think there's 2 different things going on. Actually, there could be even 3. The conciliatory services, you're following up on language that was in the ordinance. Emily's motion addresses the responses to questions that you have formed and specifically relate to internal issues. You're working on external. The existing subcommittee developing conciliatory services is from an external viewpoint. Someone from the community coming to the commission, and then how do you move forward in that process? The other thing is and again, when you guys get to a subcommittee, you can talk about this, but I think that there's within Emily's motion or interest, there's clarification, asking for clarification on some of the responses versus recommendations on an initiative. So when the subcommittee gets together, it could look at those differences. Does that make sense to you, Julie? Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Hands, please. Great, thank you. Motion passes. So maybe on the November agenda, we could actually, you could talk about who is willing to be on that subcommittee and work together.
Perhaps we could do that right now.
Okay.
I'm willing to be on that subcommittee.
I will be on it as well. Or willing to be on it.
Anya, your hand is up. Are you willing? Put that hand down, girl.
Amit?
Amit is.
Right on.
Great. So what this means, as you know, that as a subcommittee, the three of you can communicate with one another. Let me know if you need each other's email contact information. I'll send that along. You can meet face to face. Anyway, you are now a subcommittee of this commission, and you can work together and communicate via email, talking on the phone, over coffee, whatever it might be. Okay. Are there any other comments about the questions and responses, or are we ready to move on? Okay, so we'll move on to the update of the subcommittee. Gary, do you guys have any more questions from Gary? I know he has another meeting at 5:30. Gary, did you have something to say?
I was just going to let you know that I had to drop off shortly before 5:30.
Okay.
So I can figure out how to get onto Zoom again.
Okay, update from the subcommittee work. So you all received the minutes that Julie and Nataki and Anya put together and worked on. Julie, do you want to walk us the group through it?
Well, we sort of have, in a sense. We've met, we've discussed many of these same questions. The email speaks to our conversations and questions that we've had. It does sound like there will continue to need a process developed, a pipeline, if you will, some points of entry for individuals, including a safe or private way for people to discuss, some continued initial vetting on costs. And that, I believe, will be what our subcommittee will continue to work on. Are there any questions?
I want to say great job.
Oh,
And thank you, everybody who put time into it. It was great. And thank you for finding the resources. And I think that some of those resources, based on my own experience, will do it for way less than $20,000.
So Julie, I don't want to let it go until I'm clear with the minutes. Is this subcommission going to continue with its work, and its next steps will be vetting? Is that how you see this moving forward?
I am not going to speak directly for Anya, Naya, or Nataki, but my hope would be that we would continue. We'd have another meeting. I could do some vetting if assigned. Certainly, I can take on calling those folks, and but the question of a process seems to be also at play. So I am welcoming a meeting over the course of the next month.
I just would say that developing a process is, I think it's almost a second thing to tackle. I mean, vetting is one thing, and developing the resources. Developing a process is tricky because you have to do it. Anyway, I'm just saying that it's not something that you could like.
Well, I don't think for a second we could just hammer it out in 5 minutes. I do think that it's the beginning. That my thought is that we'd be meeting frequently over the next few months to continue that work. And I will certainly get with Anya, Naya, you and Nataki. We can also come up with any questions we might have for Anne.
And what happens when we come up with those questions? I think that's what I mean by process, because as an equity director, I ask very specific racial equity questions, and some conciliatory services may not be ready for that. And so, and I also, as I'm representing a commission and not OSF, so there's a very clear difference in the way I ask questions as an equity director versus what the commission may or may not feel comfortable with me asking. So I think we do need to have a discussion around process, because if we're only vetting certain types of organizations or organizations that may or may not have that background, I don't know how that's additive to the commission. So at some point, the whole group will have to give their input. Maybe what we can do is compile questions, Julie, Nataki, and myself, share them with you, Ann, and then you distribute them to the group, and folks can, yay or nay the question so that everybody feels comfortable with what we're asking the conciliatory services.
I think that's fine. I think I was using the word process in terms of the process for a person who comes forward to the commission. So that's completely separate. This
So
one,
that's a secondary piece.
that's secondary. Yeah. You're looking at how do we vet these services. Yep. That sounds great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question for this particular group of people. I think we might need to add one more person as an alternate to this this particular subgroup of the commission, just to make sure that there are always enough voices to be at the table, and because of the nature of my actual day job, I'm not sure if I can handle more meetings. I don't want to remove myself from this subcommittee, but I want to make sure that it continues to advance. If we could add another person to it, that would be great.
Is anyone willing to be an alternate for Nataki?
Yeah,
Looks like Precious has her hand up.
yeah, I'm willing to.
Great, thanks, Precious. I'll make a note of that. Do you all have each other's contact information, or do you need me to? Okay, so I'm going to send you everybody's contact information. I mean, actually, all I have are emails. I don't have your phone numbers or anything, but just keep in mind the public meeting law, that email that I sent to you about what you can do, but absolutely what you cannot do. So, great. And I'll just say, Nataki, just a sidebar, congratulations on the season, the 2022 season. It must
Thank you very much.
Great. It must feel so great.
It's really great to have the membership plan and the new ticket structure out in the world, so that people can finally come back.
Yeah, it's great. So congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Are we ready to move on to the show of hands for the regular meeting? Great. So you can vote as many times as you want. So let's start with the first Thursday of the month, which in November happens to be November 4th. So if the first Thursday of the month at 4:30 is something you can get behind, let me see hands raised. So I see 1, 2, 3. I see Emily, Precious, Sherry.
Are you also gonna send out like an email for like a doodle, because I'm gonna be picking up some extra hours with like the next few months, so I don't really have an idea what is a good time for me like right now.
Yeah, I think that you just have to go with it for right now and see what happens. I was asked to not do more doodle polls and just try and land on a regular monthly meeting time. So the other thing I think I should remind all of you is that there's no way you're going to be able to be at every single meeting. It's inevitable that you'll be on vacation or have to be with your family for different things. So don't stress about, trying to figure out, can I possibly be at every meeting on every first Tuesday? Okay, I'm so sorry. My screen keeps changing. Could I have a show of hands again for the first Thursday? I see Sherry.
At 4:30.
At 4:30. I see Sherry, Emily, Amit, Tammy. I see 4 people. Oh no, Precious. Did I miss anybody? Irene, 6 people. Okay. Now could I have a show of hands for the first Thursday of the month at 5 o'clock? I see Julie, Precious, Emily, Anya, Amit. Did I miss anybody's? Did I say everybody's name? Nataki. So I see 6. Okay, third Thursday of the month at 4:30. I see Precious, Sherry, Emily, Tammy. I see 4 people for the third Thursday of the month. Did I miss any names? So that's 4 people. And then I have the third Thursday of the month at 5 o'clock. I see Julie, Precious, Nataki, Emily, Amit, Anya. Okay, 6. So now I'm not sure what to do. We've got 6 people who are good at 4:30 on the first, 6 people who are good at 5 o'clock on the first Thursday, and 6 people who are good with the third Thursday of the month. We're going to throw out the third Thursday at 4:30 because only 4 of you were good with that. Okay. Is anybody flexible at all between 4:30 and 5 o'clock? Or are you pretty digging in your heels with those times?
So,
Go ahead, Sherry.
so for me, it's not necessarily flexibility, it was preference. And I voted my preferences. So I don't know if a vote of those 3 things and asking people to vote their preference to try to get the most people their preference, or find out if there's a time that somebody cannot come. I mean, I can come to all of them. I just know what I'd rather, what's easier, right?
Okay, well, now we have the preferences, right? We've got 6 people at 4:30, 6 people at 5, and 6 people at 5 on the third Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
So now, are there times or days that you absolutely cannot attend? Nataki, I think you said you couldn't be earlier than 5. Okay, so Nataki.
It's a struggle. If I say that I am, then that's usually the hour that my assistant has to schedule into. So I don't say that I'm available until 5.
Okay.
And that's the same for me.
Same with Anya. Okay.
And for me too.
And for Julie. Okay, so of the 6 people that said they were available at 4:30, that was your preference, but would you be available? Could you meet at 5 o'clock? Yes on Sherry and yes on Emily. Yes on Irene. Tammy, did you have a 4:30 or a 5 preference?
Well, I just put, because like I said, I really
Either one is because you don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah, and I don't want to say, but I just put the earliest as possible. But if I can make it to push it to 5, I can do that too. I just put 4:30 because last time I did 4:30 as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm hearing that 5 o'clock will work. Is there a preference for the first Thursday or the third Thursday? Is one better than the other for anyone? Gina?
The first Thursday is better for me, but I can do the third Thursday if it works better for everybody else on the commission. Bye, Gary. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
But the first Thursday is better for me.
Okay. Gina, do you have, let's hear from you. I mean, you have a crazy gazillion number of meetings. Is the first or the third better for you?
Actually, Thursday is wonderful as long as it's not the 4th Thursday. We're staying away from the 4th Thursday. It's right on Thursdays. That's kind of was my day. We could take it and make this my day. I'm good. So the 1st or the 3rd is perfect, whichever.
Okay, so I'm hearing from Emily that the first Thursday is her preference. Is everybody else on board with the first Thursday? Yes, Amit, did you have a question? Or you're just saying, yes, you are? Okay. Oh my gosh, I think it's possible that we have a solution. I think that your regular monthly meetings will be on the first Thursday at 5 o'clock. right? First Thursday at 5 o'clock, hooray. And that happens every month. So your next meeting will be November 4th. Oh my gosh, congratulations. Done. Okay. As I mentioned in the email that I sent to you, the November agenda, at the top of that agenda is the election of a chair. And it was suggested to me, you know, I've been meeting with many of you face-to-face, and would still like to meet with the rest of you face-to-face, but it was suggested at one of those meetings that we go around the room and ask people just to state, what do they think are the 3 qualities that are good for a chair. Somebody asked if there was a job description for a chair. There's not. As I mentioned in my email, a good chair is somebody who knows how to manage a conversation, draw people in, is a good listener, recognizes that good decisions are made from a collaborative viewpoint. So I think I'm just gonna go around the room, and what we're gonna do with this is really just for each of you to hear what other people think about those 3 qualities. And that'll give you something to think about for when you vote at your meeting that happens to be, oh my gosh, November 4th at 5 o'clock. So Julie, can we start with you?
Sure. I think it's just in general, I think a good facilitator should be, you know, capable of listening, of observing the task and process functions of a group to make sure that things are moving ahead correctly, but not so fast that you're ignoring emotional tensions or dynamics that need to be explored, especially when we're doing work that is very, you know, relevant to people's lived experience. I think patience with process is important. I think clear communication and being able to reiterate, to sum up and circle through communication and then move forward is important. I also do think this particular group, I mean, I want to make sure that we're being very careful in how we're placing leadership, not to ask too much labor of anybody and any BIPOC individual working on this committee, but also in, you know, not automatically placing a white body person in a role. So all those things need to be considered.
Thanks, Julie. Precious?
Thanks. I think what Julie said is also relates to some of my perceptions. I would include strategic. So different initiatives or goals that we have can be well thought out and executed in a manner that's both timely, but also includes the quality of patience. But I think it's important to be strategic. I would also say a person that is willing to do the outreach in different types of ways, different platforms, whether it's face-to-face or with groups or on social media. So a bit of technologically savvy person could also be beneficial just due to being capable of various types of communication. And then of course, like I feel it's really important to be a great listener, because we really need to hear what is going on in our community outside of our own perspectives or lived experiences. So those are my 3. Thanks.
Thanks, Precious. Nataki?
Great, because my mother just stepped in and said I had to come and take the baby. So I think the first thing is somebody who has a deep understanding of what it really takes to implement this kind of work. The second thing then would be somebody who has a track record in doing this kind of thing. And I think the third most important thing is, so for me personally, empathy is not a driver. You know, I think people have to understand why change has to be legislated. And so somebody who really understands the impact of legislating change. because when you don't actually work to legislate change, what you do is create openings for terrible things, including genocide and destruction and trauma. And so the last thing is making sure that whoever it is recognizes that legislating change is what this body was formed for.
Thanks,
I have to go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sherry?
Taki, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nataki.
Bye, everybody. You're welcome.
Thank you.
I think everybody else has already really spelled it out really well. And all the things that are already being put forth, the ability to communicate, understanding how this process works, I think is really important because it's such a foreign, first time out, feels like such a foreign process. Someone with that experience and a communicator, organization, all of the things. And I also agree with Julie that that we need to make sure that we have the appropriate voice for and face for this commission. And again, as Julie said, not wanting to put undue work on my commissioners who are not white, and also just because they're not white, but also understanding that, we need to really think about what the right face is, and is it a white face? And I'm not certain that it is.
Irene.
I think everyone here on the commission is very committed to do the work, and especially on this commission, we really need to understand everything is inclusive. So it's really not that important that we have to have a person who is not white as a chair. I think we need to have someone who is qualified and have the passion to do the work and to really have a great connection with the city, the staff and the city commission, the council. We are the bridge, so we really need to, but everyone already said all the great skills that a chair should have, and also understanding the community. And when we're talking about, well, we need to put all the dates on the calendar, that it really is important to the group. We have to understand we have many different diverse community member. If we do the Chinese, the Black, the Cambodians, the natives, your whole calendar, we never would work. So my suggestion is the chair really needs to know the community well and willing to work with the city and really being a diplomat.
Thanks, Irene. Tammy.
Great answers, everyone. I completely agree with everyone saying, but I feel that a chair for the position, you need to put a person of color in there. And I'm just going to be completely honest. The people in the city council, besides Gina, you literally have no idea how to even approach people of color and their issues and what they're going through, because just looking at the questions from Tina Fey, like you guys literally know nothing about people of color in Ashland, and that really is sad. And Irene, I hate to disagree with what you're saying, but we need a person of color as a chair, because Ashland is way too white for me. And it is time that we make a change. In addition to putting a person of color on the chair, we need to have that person who is approachable, not only approachable, but who is empathetic of everybody else who is on the commission. I just feel and this is my first commission that I've been on, I'm not like Anya. I don't have a whole bunch of stuff behind my plate, but from what I'm feeling and from what I am seeing here now is just the people of color here at Ashland and even the people of color here on this commission are not being represented as they should be. And that is a serious issue. And I hate to bring it back to race, but that's really the issue with this commission. That's what it's about. It's about racial equity, and we have none of it in the city council of Ashland today. So before we elect anyone else, if it's me, if it's anybody else, someone of color needs to be the chair, period. Period.
Thanks, Tammy.
Period. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Let's see, Emily.
I completely 100% agree with Tammy. And I don't know if I should be calling you Tamra or Tammy or what's the best way to address you.
Either or is fine. I'll answer to either or.
I completely agree with you and I have nothing else to add.
Great. Anya.
So I think that the purpose of a racial justice commission is to have somebody who is racially diverse be the chair of the commission. Because I think in a city and a town that again is in a sundown town historically,
Right.
The only way you're going to get a shift is to have somebody with lived experience giving perspective. But I think that that person also needs to understand that it's not just an issue. A racial justice committee is not, or commission is not just about people of color just getting their due or shifting things. There is a intersection around race, around gender, around identity, sexuality, religion, faith that has to be discussed. And it has to be discussed very plainly and openly and honestly. And that is a very difficult and challenging thing to do. So it needs to be somebody that I do agree with Irene, knows how to be diplomatic. Should it be someone who has history in Ashland? I don't know, because if that person existed, I think this commission would have taken root years ago. And I think that's part of the challenge, is that historically, this is a first. This is the first time the city is committing to doing this. And so there's that. Lastly, I'll say, I think whoever is the chair has to understand how to build grace into these processes and help manage the expectations of all of us, including the relationships with the city, because there's a need, and then there's the reality of the resources to supply that need. And I think whoever does this work has to clearly help everybody come back to, there's what we want to happen, and there's a process of what needs to take a certain amount of time to happen. And we've got to learn how to manage that. That's my take.
Thanks, Anya. And then finally, we have Amit.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everyone. There's a lot of important points made, which is being patient, being a good listener, being from a different race, and someone who can move the thing forward, the communication, the whole thing, this commission forward. So I have, I think, only one point that would, I think, make a difference. If somebody have worked on something similar as this one, and I'm totally disqualified for that because I have never worked on something like this. And that includes pretty much everything that a person can have as a quality to, because they have seen before what it takes, how to move the things forward, what it takes to listen to them, and what kind of problems people might be coming from, and things like that. So somebody who have done similar work before, or and obviously willing to invest more time from their busy schedule, I would prefer that person.
Great. Well, thanks, everyone. That gives all of you something to think about. I want you to know that if this is being chair is something you're interested in, you should not feel shy about nominating yourself at the November meeting. If you want to nominate someone else, you know, you might check with them first so that they're not caught off guard, but they may be willing to do it. So all good points. And I think we're good. Gina, we're kind of over by 15 minutes. Can we wait on your liaison update?
Yes, but I just want to say something really, really quick. I really, really appreciate how this went around this virtual room and everyone has food for thought. And I am not a voting body, but I know who I would nominate, but I can't nominate that person. But I really like what was said and what was put out there. So, and do keep in mind, being a person that has been on commissions in Ashland before, the chair is one person and that chair is going to work with Ann to create your agendas, but the agendas are going to come from you. The work is going to come from you, the subcommittees, the people on this commission. You guys are doing the work. The chair is the figurehead, trust me, and the vice chair. The work is coming from the subcommittees and from you. And do keep in mind on your subcommittees, we are the first. We are the first. So our work is cut out for us and we are all the right people to do it.
Great, thanks everyone. I think it was a great meeting and you move forward and I'll see you on November 4th at 5 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Have
you,
a good
everybody.
month.
Thank you.
Good evening. Bye.
Bye.